The world had forgotten its gods. The sky glowed crimson as dusk settled over the wastelands, shadows stretching like the claws of forgotten creatures. Ruins of an ancient war smoldered in silence, the scent of death lingering in the cold air. The war between vampires and werewolves had devoured both races, leaving only echoes of screams buried beneath the dust. Yet something still breathed within this graveyard of kingdoms. She moved through the ruin like a whisper, draped in midnight, her presence both ghostly and divine. Isolde, the last of her kind. Her alabaster skin glowed beneath the dying light, a stark contrast to the darkness curling around her. She was hunger and sorrow woven into something tragically beautiful. Her crimson eyes, deep as forbidden sins, burned with a desperation that made even the night hold its breath. She was seeking him. The story spoke of a beast that had not fallen, a creature of raw power and primal hunger. He prowled the northern mountains, untouched by time, bound to the curse that kept his bloodline alive even when the rest of his kind had perished. He was the last predator in a world of prey. And she needed him. A growl rippled through the silence, low and feral, sending a shiver down her spine. He was near. The forest trembled as something massive moved through the undergrowth. The scent of wild earth and storm-filled nights flooded her senses, dominant, unyielding, a force of nature untamed. Then he stepped into the moonlight. Roman. He was taller than any man, his form carved from shadow and strength. His golden eyes burned like molten fire, locked onto her with a hunger that sent lightning through her veins. The raw, untamed beauty of him was almost unbearable. His presence alone threatened to consume the night itself. For a moment, neither moved. The air between them pulsed with something ancient, something that had been forbidden since the dawn of their species. Then he spoke. "You should not have come here." His voice was a growl, deep and laced with warning. She took a step closer, the corner of her lips curving in something both sinful and sorrowful. "I had no choice." His jaw clenched, his powerful body coiled like a predator ready to strike. The way he looked at her was dangerous, as if fighting instincts older than time itself. His kind had been bred to destroy hers, and yet there was something else in his gaze, something neither of them dared to name. She lifted her chin, exposing the delicate curve of her throat, the silent invitation of a queen unafraid of death. "You are the last," she whispered, "and so am I." A muscle in his jaw twitched. The night stretched between them, thick with unspoken truths. Then, in a single motion, he closed the space between them. The heat of him was suffocating, intoxicating. She did not step back. She did not flinch. His fingers brushed her jaw, tracing the fragile line of her existence. She was delicate, yet deadly, a blade wrapped in moonlight. His grip tightened, but she did not break. The war had burned their world to ashes, but something else had survived. Something neither of them could fight. The night pulsed like a living thing. Dark clouds slithered across the moon, casting silver streaks over the frozen earth. The wind carried the scent of pine, smoke, and something deeper, something ancient and forbidden. In the heart of the ruined world, two souls stood on the edge of fate, locked in a silent war neither could afford to lose. Ronan's breath was fire, his golden eyes sharp with a hunger that had nothing to do with flesh and everything to do with something far more dangerous. His world had been carved from blood, his instincts forged in war. He had sworn never to let a vampire live, and yet, here she was, standing before him, untouched, untamed. Isolde did not cower. She was moonlight wrapped in temptation, her presence a ghostly lullaby that made the beast in him stir. Her scarlet lips, untouched by time, curved slightly, just enough to challenge him. She was waiting, testing. He stepped closer. The night held its breath. She did not flinch as his fingers traced the hollow of her throat, where a pulse should have been, cold, unyielding, and yet something burned beneath that pale surface, something that defied the death that clung to her kind. "I should kill you," he murmured, his voice rough like stone against steel. Her crimson eyes gleamed. "You won't." A growl rumbled through his chest. The sound wrapped around her like a warning, yet she remained still, watching him with the patience of something eternal. She was testing his will, waiting for the storm to break. His fingers ghosted over her skin, and for the first time in his cursed existence, he felt uncertain. She was nothing like the cold-blooded monsters he had slaughtered in the past. She was something else, something caught between the void and desire, between life and the cruel promise of oblivion. "Why did you come?" His voice was quieter now, yet still thick with the weight of a predator barely holding back the instinct to claim what stood before him. She tilted her head, the dark strands of her hair whispering against his fingertips. "Because you are the last." The words hung between them, fragile yet unshakable. The war had stolen everything. Pacts and covens reduced to dust, entire legacies swallowed by fire and betrayal. Their species were dying, fading into myths already half forgotten by the wind. But they were here, and the laws of nature would not allow such a balance to be left unresolved. She stepped closer, her fingers barely grazing the hardened planes of his chest. A feather-light touch, yet it sent something violent surging through him, a need that had nothing to do with reason. "You feel it too," she whispered. Roman's jaw clenched. She was not wrong. The bond was there, buried beneath centuries of war and hatred, something primal that defied logic. His instincts, sharpened by blood and battle, screamed at him to take what was in front of him, to claim her in the way only a beast could. But he was more than just a beast, wasn't he? Her fingers pressed against his chest, slow and deliberate, testing the boundaries between them. She was playing with fire, and she knew it. He let out a breath, rough and uneven. "You're playing a dangerous game, vampire." Her lips barely parted, her voice a whisper against the wind. "Then catch me, wolf." And in that moment, the war between them was forgotten. There was only the chase, only the hunger, only the fire that refused to die. The wind howled through the dead forest, weaving through the skeletal branches like a ghost lament. The moon hung heavy in the sky, casting silver light over the ruins of a world that had long since turned to ash. Ronan moved like a shadow, swift and silent, his golden eyes locked on the figure ahead of him. She was nothing but a flicker of darkness against the pale glow of the night, slipping through the ruins like smoke, vanishing and reappearing just beyond his reach. She wanted him to chase her, and the beast in him was only too willing to oblige. His muscles coiled as he launched forward, tearing through the undergrowth, his body a force of nature built for the hunt. She was fast, unnaturally so, but she was not faster than him. He could hear the whisper of her breath, the rustle of her midnight cloak as she twisted through the shattered remnants of a forgotten kingdom. She was a creature of the night, born from death itself. Yet the way she moved, the way her presence taunted him with every flicker of her scent, felt more alive than anything he had ever known. A flash of silver, a whisper of laughter. She darted between the ruins, her lips curled in a ghost of a smile as she glanced back at him, a queen unafraid of the monster at her heels. His blood roared. The space between them vanished in a single breath. He moved faster than thought, his instincts sharper than reason. With a snarl, he closed the distance, his hand snapping out, catching the delicate curve of her wrist. A gasp slipped past her lips. Before she could twist away, he turned, pinning her against the cold stone of a ruined wall. His body caged hers in place, the heat of him an undeniable contrast against her deathless coolness. She did not struggle. She did not yield either. Instead, she looked up at him, her crimson eyes burning with something dark, something dangerous. "You caught me," she whispered, breathless. His grip tightened ever so slightly, his pulse hammering beneath his skin. She smelled like winter nights and something forbidden, something meant to be consumed but never possessed. A slow smirk touched her lips. "What will you do now, wolf?" His jaw clenched. She was playing with fire, testing the very limits of his restraint. She knew exactly what she was doing, luring the predator closer, daring him to forget reason, to surrender to the storm crashing between them. His breath was heavy as he leaned in, just enough for her to feel the heat radiating from him. "You're dangerous." Her fingers ghosted along his forearm. Featherlight, yet it sent a jolt through him like a lightning strike. "And you are drawn to danger." His throat rumbled with something between a growl and a warning. "This will destroy us both." Her eyes never left his, then let it. The night stood still. The ruins, the war, the ghosts of their dead races. None of it mattered in this moment. There was only the beast and the temptress, locked in a battle far older than war, far deadlier than fate itself. And when his grip tightened, when the heat of his breath brushed against her skin, she knew. He was already lost. The night whispered secrets only the stars could hear. A cold wind curled through the ruins, but neither of them felt it. Not the beast whose blood ran hot with untamed fire. Not the temptress who carried the chill of eternity in her veins. Ronan's grip remained firm, his towering presence caging Isolde between the jagged stone and the storm in his golden eyes. He had caught her, yet she did not tremble. She only looked up at him, her crimson gaze filled with the kind of defiance that made his blood burn. She was too still, too calm, too knowing. "You ran," he murmured, his voice dark velvet laced with something raw. A smirk ghosted her lips, as if daring him to unravel. "You chased." His fingers traced the delicate line of her wrist, lingering against the unnatural coolness of her skin. The contrast between them, fire and frost, wildness and grace, felt like a curse neither of them could escape. "You don't belong here," he growled, though the words carried no conviction. "And yet, here I stand." Her voice was a breath against the night. "Do you regret finding me, Wolf?" His jaw clenched. Regret? No. If anything, he regretted how easily she made him forget the war that had once drawn them apart. How effortlessly she stripped him of logic with nothing more than a glance, a whisper, a tilt of her head that sent dark strands of hair cascading over her shoulders like liquid shadow. His free hand lifted before he could stop himself, his fingers brushing the curve of her jaw. A mistake. A dangerous, unforgivable mistake. But she did not pull away. Instead, she leaned into his touch. It was the smallest movement, yet it shattered something inside him. Her eyes darkened, her breath unsteady. "You're hesitating," she murmured. A warning, a challenge, a dare. Ronan's patience snapped. With a low snarl, he pulled her against him, the strength in his arms undeniable, the force of his presence swallowing her whole. She gasped, her fingers pressing into his chest as if testing the power beneath his skin, as if she could tame the storm inside him with nothing but her touch. "You play a dangerous game," he whispered against the shell of her ear. She tilted her head, bearing the delicate curve of her throat in silent defiance. "Then play it with me." His restraint wavered. She was the very thing his kind had sworn to destroy, the enemy wrapped in the scent of midnight and the promise of sin. And yet, when she moved closer, when her cool fingertips traced slow, deliberate paths over his skin, he did not resist. He let himself burn. The ruins around them faded, swallowed by the heat of something neither of them had ever known. The past no longer mattered. The war was a ghost that did not belong in this moment. There was only her, the last of her kind, and him, the last of his. Bound not by fate, but by a hunger too deep to be denied. The wind howled through the wreckage, carrying with it the silent promise of what was to come. The night was breathless. A storm churned above the ruins, thick clouds swallowing the moon, casting the world into shadow. The air pulsed with something electric, something alive. It was not the coming storm that made the earth tremble, it was them. Ronan held her, his grip unyielding, his body a wall of heat against her frozen elegance. Its golden eyes burned into her, searching, demanding, daring her to break beneath his touch. But Isolde did not yield. She only looked up at him, her crimson gaze dark with something neither of them dared name. The distance between them had long vanished. His hand traced a slow path along her jaw, fingers rough with the weight of battles fought and enemies slain. She was a creature of ice, yet the fire in his touch melted something deep within her, something she had sworn would never thaw. "Do you understand what you've done?" His voice was low, dangerous, the words curling like smoke between them. A faint smile played on her lips. "I've given you a choice." A growl rumbled in his chest. "No, vampire, you've sealed your fate." She did not flinch, did not fear. Instead, she reached up, her touch impossibly light, grazing the edge of his jaw, the roughness of his unshaven skin beneath her fingertips. The contrast between them, his warmth, her cold, should have repelled, but instead it pulled them deeper into the unspoken war raging between their bodies. A war neither wished to win. The storm above cracked, lightning carving white-hot veins across the sky. The wind howled through the wreckage, but the world around them did not exist. There was only the heat radiating from him, the fire in his gaze, the pull of something primal between them. His fingers curled around her wrist, his grip tightening, not in pain, but in possession. A silent vow that he would not let her slip away. She tilted her head, her midnight hair cascading over her shoulder, her throat exposed in an unspoken invitation. Then take what is already yours. His breath hitched. The war that had defined them, the blood spilled between their kind, the hatred that had burned in his veins. It all crumbled in that single moment. She was the last of her kind. He was the last of his. They were never meant to exist in the same world, never meant to touch, to hunger, to need. And yet, here they stood. The storm raged, rain beginning to fall in cold silver streaks, but neither moved away. Her fingers curled into the fabric of his tunic, pulling him closer, as if testing the depths of his restraint. His restraint no longer existed. His hand threaded into her hair, tilting her head back, forcing her to meet his gaze. This is not mercy, he warned. This is not salvation. Her lips parted, breath uneven, eyes burning like dying stars. Then let it be ruin. And ruin it was. The storm had become their witness. Rain fell in icy torrents, soaking into the ruins, washing away the dust of a world long burned to cinders. Thunder rumbled, shaking the earth beneath them, but neither flinched, neither moved. The tempest in the sky was nothing compared to the one raging between them. Ronan's grip had not loosened. If anything, it had tightened, as if he feared she might vanish like mist between his fingers. She had offered him ruin, and he had taken it without hesitation. His golden eyes burned as he drank in the sight of her, lips parted, dark lashes wet from the rain, crimson gaze laced with something unspoken, something that had no place between enemies. She was temptation itself, and she knew it. The weight of his presence was suffocating, his body heat searing against the frozen silk of her skin. He had been made for war, built for destruction, yet here he stood, surrendering to a force he could not fight. She reached up, fingers light as falling snow, tracing the sharp edge of his jaw. The roughness of his unshaven skin beneath her fingertips sent a thrill through her. Power, strength, unrelenting dominance, and yet he had not pulled away. He had not let go. "You're still holding back," she whispered, voice barely audible over the storm. His jaw tightened. He had caged her against the cold stone, his breath rough and uneven, yet even now restraint lingered in his bones. A war between instinct and reason. A battle he was slowly losing. "You don't know what you're asking for." His voice was gravel, rough edges softened only by the way his fingers traced slow, deliberate paths over her skin. Her lips curled in something between defiance and invitation. "Then show me." The words were a challenge, a test of control, of dominance, of the fragile thread holding back the hunger between them. The thread snapped. A low growl rumbled in his chest, and before she could speak again, he moved, swift, unforgiving. His hand slid to the curve of her throat, fingers pressing just enough to remind her that he was the predator in this story. The air between them crackled with something alive, something neither of them could stop. She did not flinch, did not pull away. Instead, she tilted her head ever so slightly, baring the delicate line of her throat, her silent defiance laced with the promise of surrender. Ronan's breath came harsh and heavy. He had fought wars, torn through enemies without mercy, but this was a battle of an entirely different kind, one he was dangerously close to losing. Her voice was a whisper against the wind. "You fear what you cannot control." His fingers flexed against her throat, his restraint the dying ember in the firestorm of his need. "And you crave what can destroy you." Lightning split the sky, casting silver streaks over their entangled forms. The rain ran down their skin, cold as death, but neither of them felt it. They were lost in something deeper, something beyond reason, beyond species, beyond the war that had defined them. There was no more caution, no more logic. Only the beast and the temptress, bound together by a hunger neither of them could deny. And as the storm raged on, the ruins bore witness to the breaking of every law their kind had ever known. The storm had quieted, but the world still trembled. The ruins stood in eerie silence, bathed in the silver glow of the moon peeking through restless clouds. The rain had eased to a whisper, leaving behind the scent of damp earth and the faint trace of blood that still lingered in the air. But it was not battle that had left its mark here tonight. It was something far more dangerous. Ronan's hand still held her, firm and possessive, as if even the thought of letting go was an impossibility. His breathing was rough, his chest rising and falling with the weight of a war not yet won. He had conquered battlefields, torn through enemies without hesitation, yet this war between them had unraveled him in ways he never thought possible. Isolde was still in his grasp, her cold skin against his burning heat, her crimson gaze locked onto his with an unreadable expression. She was a creature of the night, a queen of shadows, and yet, beneath the deadly elegance, there was something raw, something fragile, and that was what terrified him the most. She was staring at him as if he were something more than a monster, as if he were something she could trust. His grip tightened, his jaw clenching as his golden eyes roamed over her, searching for regret, for hesitation. But there was none, only the echo of the storm still lingering between them, the silent promise of what they had already become. "You're not afraid," he murmured, more to himself than to her. Her lips curled in the faintest of smiles. "Should I be?" His fingers traced a slow path along her arm, memorizing the contrast between them, his warmth, her cold, two beings that were never meant to belong in the same world. And yet, here they stood. "I could destroy you," he warned, voice low, dangerous. Her eyes darkened, her fingers brushing over his scars, tracing the remnants of battles fought and survived. "Then why haven't you?" Roman exhaled sharply, his restraint unraveling thread by thread. He had been raised to hate her kind, trained to see them as nothing more than prey. But there was nothing weak about her, nothing helpless. She met his fire with ice, his strength with a power of her own. She was not a victim. She was his equal. His hand slid to the curve of her waist, his fingers pressing just enough to remind her of his dominance, of the unspoken power that still crackled between them. But instead of resisting, she leaned into him, her body fitting against his like a whisper of fate. Her voice was a breath against his skin. "You were made to hunt. I was made to endure." She tilted her head, her dark hair falling over her shoulder like liquid night. "So tell me, Wolf, are you done fighting me?" The growl that rumbled in his chest was not one of anger, but of surrender to something neither of them could escape. His hands framed her face, his touch both firm and reverent, as if memorizing every detail, every curve, every fragile piece of her existence. "There is no turning back from this," he murmured. She smiled, and for the first time there was something soft in her gaze. "Then let there be no return." And just like that, the last thread of restraint between them snapped. The ruins stood as silent witnesses to the fall of a beast and the rise of something far more dangerous. An unbreakable bond forged in the ashes of war, written in the language of fire and shadow. The night had never felt so still. The storm had passed, leaving the ruins bathed in the ghostly glow of the moon. The air was thick with the scent of rain and the remnants of a battle neither of them had won, because there had never been sides. Only them, only the war of hunger and restraint, fire and ice, colliding in a way that defied reason. Ronan stood motionless, his breath uneven, his golden eyes locked onto the woman before him. She was a vision carved from midnight, her dark hair falling over her shoulders, her pale skin glistening under the silver light. The crimson of her gaze was no longer a warning, it was an invitation. And he had already accepted it. His fingers traced the delicate lines of her collarbone, slow and deliberate, as if memorizing every piece of her that he had once sworn to destroy. A shudder ran through her, barely noticeable, but he felt it. He felt everything. "You are trembling," he murmured, his voice thick with something primal. Isolde's lips curled, a phantom of a smile. "Perhaps the cold is finally reaching me." A lie. He could feel the way she melted against him, the way her body responded to his with a quiet surrender she refused to name. She was a creature of the night, a queen of shadows, yet she was fragile beneath his touch. Not weak, never weak, but delicate in a way that made his control slip, thread by thread. You should have never come to me, he said, voice a low growl. And yet, here I am, her fingertips brushed against the rough plane of his chest, teasing along the scars of battles past. Tell me, Wolf, do you regret it? His grip tightened on her waist, firm enough to remind her who he was. What he was. A beast, a predator, a creature meant to tear her apart. But she had never been prey. The world had long since vanished around them, leaving only this moment, this impossible thing between them that neither could explain. The war that had defined them had crumbled into dust beneath their feet, irrelevant now, insignificant compared to the hunger that burned through their veins. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You are still holding back. He exhaled sharply. I am giving you a choice. She reached up, threading her fingers through his dark hair, pulling him closer, her cool breath a contrast to the fire raging beneath his skin. I made my choice the moment I stopped running. A final warning, a final chance to turn away. And then there was no more hesitation. His lips found hers, and the world shattered. She was cold, impossibly cold, but he burned for her, his hands gripping her as if he could anchor himself in her presence. Her fingers curled into him, sharp, demanding, answering his dominance with her own quiet defiance. The ruins around them stood silent, ancient stones bearing witness to something forbidden, something impossible, a werewolf and a vampire, bound together by something deeper than blood, darker than war. It was not love, not yet. It was something raw, something dangerous, something that could either ruin them or save them. And as the night stretched on, and the past faded into nothing, one truth remained unshaken. There was no going back. There never had been.